For the safety of all the tens of thousands of people that have gathered in and around the arena, tonight's rally will be postponed until another day. Thank you very much for your attendance, and please go in peace.
It was kind of a microcosm in a lot of ways of the Trump campaign. You had this sort of fierce energy. You had this sort of very intense backlash protest. You had the candidate who managed to get unbelievable press on it by lying about the event and then that becoming its own story.
We have a right to speak, and we were stopped from having that right of freedom.
It was sort of a great microcosm of the craziness of 2016.
First, our top story this morning, anger surrounding Donald Trump's presidential campaign reaches a boiling point in Chicago.
A concern for safety Trump's campaigning in Chicago, forcing the GOP frontrunner to call off his campaign rally.
Now this after violent agitators hijacked what was to be a peaceful campaign rally.
We knew there was going to be a lot of protesters. There had been several different groups converging on the area, and Chicago is no stranger to protests of all stripes.
Just like a whole rally outside. There's gates, there's policemen, there's fights going on, people chanting. It was like a little riot outside.
I think a lot of progressives in Illinois and in Chicago took it as an insult that you're not just going to come into what is the sort of cradle of what Obama was and is and did for this country and sort of turn up your nose or thumb your nose at us. We're gonna protest that.
Trump in Chicago, is not gonna ever turn out well, and you could just see that from the beginning that there was gonna be no good come from him.
It is curious that he would speak in downtown Chicago. Now that I think about it, in a forum like that.
I think in a racist Republican candidate's mind, thinking Chicago is just this chaotic, unsafe, unreliable place where the community and the police aren't getting along. I think that stereotypical kind of knee-jerk interpretation of events would say to someone like a Donald Trump, I can't go there, it's unsafe.
Chicago is having this unbelievable violence. People being killed, 4, 5, 6 in a weekend. And I'm saying, what is going on? And then you look at Chicago. What's going on in Chicago?
This was also around the time when there were a lot of protests going on regarding the police shooting of Laquan McDonald, the Chicago teenager. And you had a lot of the same protesters, I think, from that movement show up in opposition to Trump.
After the Laquan McDonald video was released, people were just enraged.
I would say that there was a heightened tension in the city, a palpable feeling of a disconnect between the police and the community.
I believe that was a time of very high tension in the city, among the citizens of Chicago, and that tension was definitely directed towards the police, towards the mayor, towards any kind of representation of the state or law enforcement.
That announcement touched off the worst of the unrest. Outside, the protests swelled. Crowds in the thousands took to the streets, and standoffs ensued between Chicago police and the crowd.
There were a number of people who walked right up to the police officers and were kind of in their faces. And that was where I started to see some of that, the Black Lives Matter presence in front of the police. And it was peaceful, but literally this close to cops.
You saw some of the chants of 16 shots and a cover-up and stuff that you saw in protests regarding the McDonald killing.
They wanted to have a presence that stood up to Trump's bigotry, to Trump's, what he stood for, and then a part of me thinks this was also an opportunity just to kind of have a presence in front of the police.
I think it just triggered an outpouring of anguish and took the lid off of any distrust that there was between citizens and the police, but also citizens and government.
So if you see somebody getting ready to throw a tomato, knock the crap out of them, would you? Seriously.
This was around the time that in his rallies, there were things that were happening where he was targeting people in the audience and like having them removed.
Get him out of here! Get out! Get him out of here!
And riling up his audience, right? And this is where he was starting to sort of establish his base.
After Trump canceled, there was a big issue among security and police in terms of how do you get the Trump supporters out of this building when there's this sea of people who really did not like Trump all around there. How do you do that peacefully and safely?
There were police everywhere, and because they were kind of just blocking it out, so like there was really only one exit, but like I could see there were people fighting. There was like, you could see like almost like a fire like going on somewhere. It was actually nuts.
There were people that were just yelling shit, right? And they were just trying to antagonize people. And people wouldn't have it. And so at one point, somebody was getting chased down the street into a parking garage. And so there were a bunch of Trump supporters in this parking garage who didn't know if they could come out because on the ground level were anti-Trump supporters.
But looking back at it, like, I'm not surprised at all. Like, he didn't go. Like, even from the beginning, just like how it was looking when people were just entering the place, like, it really was not going to happen. Yeah.
The word got out that Trump had to cancel because of safety concerns. And so who does that point the finger at? That points the finger at people who were opposed to Trump, makes them look like the bad guys.
Trump is masterful in creating a narrative around events like that bolster and kind of energize his base.
It wasn't a sort of the mob kept Donald Trump from speaking. Donald Trump's unwillingness to engage in real debate and real dialogue was the reason there wasn't a rally.
I think we have to stand by free speech. Hate speech is a different story to me. And so I think that's probably where I would draw the line when we know that it's actually hate speech or speech that can create possibility of harm.
It's hard for me to give space to people who choose to follow a known bigot and somebody who has shown himself to do some racist.
The Republican Party right now is in danger of becoming the Trump Party only. And there aren't a lot of voices speaking up. And hopefully those young people who do, personally hold a more conservative point of view will say we could be conservatives and also socially tolerant. And I think that's the difference between Trumpism and Republicanism.
I think supporters on both sides could take away whatever they wanted from it. If you're a Trump supporter, you say, look at these liberals, they won't even let our candidate come here and speak because they're acting so crazy, these damn hippies. And then the liberals can say, hey, we came together and we stopped a candidate who we really disagree with. This is a win for our side.
I've never felt in my lifetime until this election that it was as harsh and as divided as it's ever been. There's very little middle ground. You're either fully in favor or you're fully in opposition to Trump.
We need to have a healthy Republican Party and a healthy Democratic Party. So I'm all for young people in Chicago choosing whatever views they want.
But to see young people, right, like high school age kids or college age kids coming out and like with this sense of pride in who they were and who they were supporting.
It was like an experience I'll never forget, and it was like a moment in history.
And I think seeing kids take to the streets, seeing them protest police shootings, seeing them protest Donald Trump, seeing them come out and vote in large numbers in 2018, that's a healthy sign for democracy, and that's how you create change.